Hello and welcome to Moving Forward, a podcast by Good Habits. I'm your host, Amy Clark. In this podcast, we make sure you get all the insights you need to build a high-performing learning culture to future-proof your organization. Whether you're an HR professional, a learning and development manager, or anyone looking to give their team a leg up, you'll learn the trends and tricks you need to get your people learning and moving forward. In each episode, we invite an expert or two to help us unpack some statements designed to get them sharing their best insights. And today, we're talking about how to make learning more relevant, more engaging, and most of all, less boring. So to help me unpack this, I'd like to welcome two guests, Shana Bakker and Ava Cole. Please introduce yourselves, and Shana, I'd like to start with you, because I believe that you've recently been voted Learning and Development Thought Leader of the Year.
Yes, I've been outvoted by now because somebody else is now thought leader,
Okay.
but I was thought leader of the year for a year.
Tell me how that happened.
So there's a branch organization in the Netherlands and they choose one every year and they make a short list and I was on it. And then they have this big gala where everybody dresses up. And I was actually gossiping with my colleague when they were voting, when they presenting the vote, and I thought I knew who was going to win, and apparently it was me. So I was shocked. I didn't have any speech, so I blubbered and snot. And
Yeah, but good thing you're a thought leader, so I'm sure you were very,
I
very...
did have something to say, but I had to make it up on the spot.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And just tell us a bit more. Why do you think you got that accolade?
I think because of the books I've written, but also because of my trying to create as much content for our community, learning and development experts, and the podcast No More Boring Learning. I think that's really helped.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you for joining us today. I know you have your own podcast, so we appreciate you guesting on this one. And we can't wait to hear your insights. And to add to yours, we're going to have Ava over here. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm Ava and I'm a coach at Good Habits, also known as a customer success manager. And in my job, I help organizations embed our product in their processes, but also in their learning culture to enhance their learning culture. So
Awesome. So you're going to tell us quite a bit more from the sort of practical perspective. What's happening with these companies? How are they getting their people learning?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So as you heard, we structured this podcast around a couple of statements. So we have a couple scheduled that we are going to jump into now. So the first statement is, learning suffers from a negative reputation. What do you guys think about that one?
I think it's absolutely true. And I think in part trainers and L&D people and teachers are to blame for that. Because I think when people think about learning, they don't think about the things they do every day, because we learn every day. But I think people start to think about sitting in a classroom where somebody forces you to listen to topics that you don't really like, you don't see the relevance of.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm with people, anywhere in the world, and I ask the team, who could teach somebody here something about something? The guitars come out, they start teaching about food, and everybody's willing to learn. However, when we say, do you want to learn something? People go, oh no, please don't send me to a course.
Yeah.
So I think we're battling something really old-fashioned that has been ingrained in all of us from a very young age.
That's a really excellent point you make. I mean, especially the food one, I actually just recently noticed a couple of people in my team who've been bonding so much over sort of sharing recipes, sharing techniques of how to do things, taking it home, coming back, talking about it afterwards. I mean, that is learning, I guess.
Yes.
And I think we do forget that.
Yeah.
What's been your experience with the boring learning?
Yeah, I totally agree with Shana. It's just when I talk to customers about what do you do about learning, how's your learning culture, what does it look like, then they say, yeah, we don't have any because we don't have we don't have classes or something like that. And then I say, yeah, but you do have a learning culture. But what does it look like? How do people know what they need to do their job?
Yeah, because you cannot not learn.
No.
I mean,
You always learn.
Your
Yeah.
brain is prepped for it and it's ready for it. And to associate it with only in classroom learning or only doing an e-learning is really old-fashioned.
Yeah,
but also, when we do have classes, we should spice them up and make sure that they are engaging and relevant and great.
Yeah.
I had a question. I wanted to know, what are you seeing in terms of like forced learning?
For example, when it comes to when you have a security audit or something like that, then they force employees to do trainings because you need to tick the box that someone has done the security training.
Yeah, they make it mandatory, and
They make it mandatory.
I've walked into a back room in a hotel where I was training,
Yeah.
and there was this young guy sitting behind a computer just pressing keys.
Okay,
and I was
yeah.
like, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm doing the mandatory training for the whole
Yeah.
team." So whenever we go into mandatory, we know we're gonna expect people to
Yeah.
disengage immediately, and probably to make some fraudulent actions to make it happen.
Yeah, but sometimes I understand where customers are coming from.
Absolutely.
So I also encourage them to let the employees know what's in it for them. Why should you do this security training? Why is this important? And why does it mean something to us, but also to you? So that's a bit of nuance, I think, in
yeah.
the mandatory.
And then the problem becomes when they want to share that why, how do you share
Yeah.
it? Do you share it like, let me explain to you why this is super important? Or do you explain why it's important as a company,
Yeah.
to make it more engaging
Yeah.
instead of going...
So how would you do that? Is there like a game or a way that you could make this a little bit more enticing?
Yeah, I've recently created a game around it, but also to point out if something goes wrong, what would happen? So we've created some
consequences.
fake headlines for that company that if they hadn't done something, what kind of headlines would pop up? So
Yeah.
people would go, oh, that would be really bad.
Yeah.
And you don't think about that on a day-to-day basis. So to create that outside-in perspective really helps for people to see, oh yeah, hang on. This is kind of important, even though it's boring.
Yeah.
Let me go through it anyway.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that customers make they have the thinking process. Oh, it's just not just pushing a course or pushing people to training. It's really like the whole story around it, and I think that's a nice movement to see right now.
Yeah, you need to bring people out of this high school mindset where you, like you said, you spent 8 hours learning something, it wasn't effective. When am I ever going to use this?
Yeah.
What's it useful for? So really connecting that. I love the idea of the article headlines.
Yeah.
As a journalist myself, I'm like, this is a very effective way to do it.
Absolutely, or create a leaderboard and have this. I don't know if we can say this in this podcast, but you can maybe beep it out. But I've had one company where we created the security bitch of the month, so that that would be a title that you could walk around, make fun of, but also be super serious about, and to score some points and make sure that you stay ahead of the rest, and maybe get a little reward or something fun. So because it's so important. You need to do the work to make people understand how important it is instead of just going, do the mandatory training and shut up.
It sounds like you've got some really fun ideas on how to make things a little bit less boring, going away from these repetitive concepts like PowerPoint presentations. I mean, come on, PowerPoint presentations, we're still doing that?
Yes. I think many people still stand in front of a slide with their back turned to their audience and just...
With a lot of text on it.
Yes, and almost look shocked at the next slide that is popping up going, I didn't know I had this slide, and then start reading it out. It's still happening a lot.
You paint a really, really clear picture of that. I hate to say that I've definitely been guilty of that. But, what's the solution?
So the solution is just pictures behind you. And the solution is, one thing I love to use is always create a make 'em hungry. That's what concept that we've created, and it's been getting traction around the world. And it means that before you do anything, you make sure that your listeners, your audience leans forward and they want to hear what you say. So you can introduce something by going, okay, let me talk to you about this model. Or you can say, let's look at the 3 biggest mistakes that young leaders very often make. And let's make sure that you as young leaders are never going to fall for those. So now people are probably leaning a little bit more forward because they're going to go, oh, there are pitfalls that I could, avoid. Okay, teach me. And only then deliver something. And for PowerPoint, if you need to use it, just a few words and lots of pictures on it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's amazing. And where would you say sort of gamification comes in?
So I've had a whole addiction to gamification because I used to live on one of the canals in Amsterdam, and suddenly when Pokemon Go was, becoming popular, my door apparently was something where they could
Pokestop or something.
Pokestop, yes. So they were all standing in front of my door swiping their phones, and I was like, "What's happening with my door?" So I got totally addicted, and I reverse engineered what Pokemon Go did to have all those children that used to be sat in their room alone playing games are now running around the streets, beating obesity and making sure that they're moving and having fun. And I found the principle inside the game that really causes people to keep on wanting to learn. So, for example, one of the things I've taken from them is to have an unexpected reward. So in Pokemon Go, you can catch a certain fish that's visible everywhere, and it's very boring, and it seems to not have any powers. But if you catch enough, suddenly this one becomes a very dominant force of nature, and everybody wants it. So to create in learning little rewards that people can get was really super powerful. Yeah. So, for example, I've worked with a company where they had they worked in tech, and they were interacting with clients, with customers, and we had them put on a T-shirt called Rookie, and we said, even though you're a rookie, just walk up to people and start talking to them about tech, because you know a lot about tech. You might not know everything about the shop yet, but you do. And we had a secret reward that their shop manager had, and it was a button saying you made a customer laugh with a very fun emoji. So whenever they made a customer laugh, they would get this reward, and they would go in the WhatsApp group that they had with the team, going, "Look, there are secret rewards. You need to get them too," and they would be able to have them for points or get some money for it. So secret rewards is super engaging for people.
That's really motivational.
Makes me think about an organization had like an Easter hunt within their online learning system.
Good.
So they set up a few questions about work-life balance, happiness, etc. And with the tip, you can find the answer within course XYZ or something. And then when someone answered the questions, at first they would get like the big chocolate Easter egg as a prize. So that's some like the hidden rewards or making it fun.
Or even when I do a keynote, it's very often scary for people when you're in the audience, especially if there's a large audience, to ask a question or say something. So whenever the first person speaks, I usually have one of my books ready, and I just run to them and give them the book to show it's okay to ask questions. You might even get a reward. So there's lots of tiny little things that we can do to engage, which brings me to TikTok. As we probably all know, most of the learning, even though TikTok, is it going to stay? But most of the learning for young people now happens on TikTok. Yeah. And if you look at how they create content and how engaging the content is and how much of a hook they create so that suddenly you're swiping for hours, I think all of the e-learning companies can learn so much from that to create content that's super engaging.
Super sticky as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
This kind of brings me to the next statement.
Okay.
Because it's very topical. Learning must always be fun to be effective.
I do not completely agree, but also not disagree. Me being here is not totally fun. It's a bit awkward and out of my comfort zone, but I know I'm learning. So it's a bit painful, maybe.
Yes.
So that's why I don't totally agree or disagree, but yes, there should be a fun component in it. Like me being here with you guys is fun, but it's also a bit
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I completely disagree with the statement. Not with you. But I think learning should not be fun. I think learning should be engaging. It should be relevant. You should be scared at times. And if it's fun, great, let's go for that. But let's make sure that when we're learning or when we're put in a learning environment, that the time goes fast. Let's people go at, let's say there's an afternoon session and it's 4 o'clock and they go, what? It's 4 o'clock already?
Yeah.
I'm so engaged, I've lost track of time.
So you're saying time flies when you're engaged, not when you're having fun.
Yes.
So you're nuancing the meaning of fun.
Yeah, I think it's fun when you feel value, but it's not necessarily. I think when we start saying learning should be fun, people think we should all be laughing the whole time, and that's not the point. The point is, it should probably be scary a little bit, and sometimes you should be on your toes, and sometimes you should be stretching and uncomfortable, and sometimes you should be laughing out loud. So I think it should be a relevant experience that creates value, and that's what I mean by not boring. Yeah,
that seems like quite a tough thing to achieve in one sort of learning experience. Can you unpack what that might look like?
Yeah, so very often if I look at a training session itself, I usually open it with a quiz. So I just don't introduce myself, don't go into introduction round, don't go into what is your learning goal or showing the program. I just start with, well, it's time, let's start. There's 2 teams, your team A, your team B, or your team 1, to have both teams be number 1. And then start with a quiz. And in the quiz, I put some burning platform questions like, why do we need to change? What's happening outside of this organization? What are some of the numbers of the organization? And to just engage them into a quiz with some points that are suddenly given or detracted when they are being naughty with each other, or to create something where their brains are on fire, their neurons are firing. They're also sort of having fun, but they're also learning at the same time. And I think something that is a little bit deregulating, a little bit unexpected, can be causing a lot more fun. Because if you ask people on the street, okay, describe a normal training session to me, they will all go, well, first the trainer will introduce themselves, sometimes even show pictures of them as a baby. Then they'll go for an introductory round and everybody will be talking a long time. Then they'll ask for the learning goals. Then they'll show the program and assure us there will be lunch, as if I'm expecting that there's not going to be any lunch.
And no one's listening to the other people introducing themselves. They're just wondering what they're going to say when it's their turn.
Yeah. And what also happens is that people listen to what the previous person and they're going to repeat what they said or try and go over. And sometimes trainers even do this when the whole group knows themselves because they're a team, so they all know each other. But then the trainer says, because I don't know you, please do the whole introduction. Are you nuts? That's a waste of time.
Eva, I'd like to hear from you what you're seeing with organizations, because I think that a lot of the time there's a learning platform.
Yeah.
And that kind of is where it stops.
Yeah. Yeah, and what we see now is very much like the blended forms. So they do have a session internally with the teams, but they use tools from platforms to make it more engaging. So they send out a questionnaire or make people really engaged before coming into the classroom, so they know what to expect. And they know that the session is going to be about a certain topic. So that's one way to get everyone in action mode in the room. But also, when you talk about learning, there are so many different ways to learn.
Yes,
like reading a magazine or viewing a video or doing a workout with each other, and then not the workout in the gym, but our workouts,
the brain workouts.
The brain workouts. There are so many ways to make it more engaging, as you say, within the classroom.
You know, the mention of the word workouts triggered me. I was just thinking about this when you were talking about being uncomfortable. I'm really into gymming. And, you know, like with anything that's good for you, sometimes it isn't super pleasant. What do you think about that? Like sometimes you just have to do something that's a little bit tough.
I think we all know that about learning. We know that learning isn't fun. It's fun. It's not the pursuit of happiness, but it's the happiness of the pursuit, right? So it's like when you look at a little baby, they're trying to stand for the first time. They're going to fall down over and over and over again, but they're never going to go, oh, I'm giving up. No more walking for me. You know, they're just going to go, ooh, it's not working yet. Let me try it this way. Let me try it that way. And I think that's what we everybody knows and we're used to that, but we sort of forget it in our striving for perfection and not enjoying the ride. So go for the happiness of the pursuit.
It's a process, right?
Yeah.
It's not like a one and done linear
No.
situation. Actually, could you tell us more about sort of the stages of learning, how we learn?
Yeah, so there's 4 things you want to sort of tick off when you're learning something new, especially when it's a skill that you actually do. So you want to do some reflection on, okay, hang on, how does this work? How have I seen other people do this? How does it work? What did I like when somebody did that? What did I not like? So do some reflection. Then some theory. Sometimes we add some theory, or sometimes you look up a TikTok, or you go to Good Habits and find something, or you go in a training and you learn some new theory. And then do some experimentation. And experimentation is where you sort of try it out for yourself without announcing it to the world. So it's less scary.
Low profile.
You do a little bit of, let me try it with my mum before I try it on my scary boss. And then doing the actual thing. And what you see is between the reflection and the theory, there's an intention-action gap. So very often we learn something in theory, we have some reflections about it, but then there's a gap between our intention of doing something with it and actually doing it. So one of the things that learning environments can provide is actually trying it out. Because if once we do that, we jump that gap during a training session or a workshop or whatever, it becomes easier to actually start doing it in real life. And I find I have clients all over the world, and they send me their training programs to review and to give some feedback and enhance. And very often it's only thinking.
The
So it's
classroom.
only doing theory and doing some reflection, and not actually trying it out and failing and having the discomfort of learning. Because the 2 parts of learning that are very comfortable are theory and reflection, because your own brain can hardly hurt you, because it's hard, your brain needs to protect you. So to go to actually doing it and experiencing how hard it is in the gym when you try out those new weights or whatever, that's something that's very important for us as learning and development people, to keep stimulating and keep people do that inside our sessions.
But isn't there also like a role for the managers or the team leads to like engage with the people after they done the training session?
Yes.
To ask them, hey, what have you learned? How are you going to do it differently? Or I see that you've done this differently. Great work. Isn't there a role for the leaders as well?
Yeah. And I think it's partly also because we as L&D people know that the leader is so important, to make sure that they're engaged, to make sure we send them that email, or we plot something in their calendars saying, ask these 3 questions, or involve them in the learning, because they are almost the bridge to doing it in practicality. Yeah.
Is that something you ask of organizations when they ask you to do a training session? Is that a mandatory thing that you say, I will give you a training session, but the managers need to be involved as well? Or?
I usually have a slide with a fish, because I'm quite Dutch, and it says fish starts to rot at the head, which is a Dutch expression.
Okay.
Which means that if the leaders don't do it, you can invest all the money you want into learning. If the leaders aren't, helping people, enforcing it, stimulating people, seducing people to actually do something with it, then you're wasting your money. So then I don't want to work with you.
And creating those environments to practice those exact things that you talk about.
Yeah.
And that often is up to the leader to identify those opportunities to go and practice those things. Yeah. We've had a great discussion about training sessions you've held. So this brings me to our next statement. Rating a training experience 8.3 out of 10 is great news.
No, stop it.
Why?
Oh, this is my biggest frustration. No, so this really shows how backward and old-fashioned our industry can still be, because we're almost like hijacked by the 8.3 by people rating us at the end of the session. And I always want to compare it to, let's say I'm going to my physician, and then afterwards she's treated me, and afterwards I need to rate her on how much fun it has been in her office. Of course, it hasn't been fun, because I had to undress, and maybe she stuck some needles into me. So it's the wrong way. And And also, I'm not a physician, so how can I judge her treating me? I can judge what my body does with her treatment, but I can't judge how she treated me. And the same with the hairdressers. Let's say the hairdresser, I can judge how I like my style, but I can't judge him on whether he was fun to talk with. I can judge him on that, but that wouldn't give me information about how good a hairdresser he is. I'd rather have a hairdresser, let's see if we agree on this, a hairdresser who gives you the best cut ever. You walk out super confident, you look awesome, but
they're a bit of an asshole.
They're a bit of an asshole, yeah. So I think very often when we ask the question, how much do you rate the trainer? An 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10. First of all, it's always an 8 out of 10, or sometimes a 9 out of 10. It's hardly ever lower. It doesn't really measure how much I've learned, the practicality of it. So for training companies or L&D companies to advertise with that number, that's basically telling us, we're old-fashioned. Yeah. We don't care about you learning. We just care about how much you like us.
What would be, instead of the 8 out of 10, selling point then? What would you have instead?
So I would go, all right, so let's hang on. This company wants to improve their customer loyalty. Let's measure the customer loyalty. And if that's improving because of the learning that's been happening, have we gotten better? Do we think we've gotten better? And also, does the customer think we've gotten better? Because we need to measure it where it matters. So when the physicians treated me, my body is going to tell us if I've gotten better. So we need the right person to tell us if we've done something right. Of course, when you have a large training company, you do multiple sessions a day, you might want to do an 8 out of 10 check, but just to measure, are the people not unhappy? So it's a double negative. Yeah. Because then you might need to call them and say, hey, hang on, what happened? Was the trainer too straight with you or too strict with you?
Customer service more than...
Yeah, but it doesn't... The 8 out of 10 doesn't measure if learning has happened. It doesn't measure if we're going to apply it on the job. And it specifically doesn't measure, does it make a difference that we've learned this?
But now you mentioned this customer service example. Like you would really need to know exactly what it is you're setting out to change and how you're going to measure that.
Absolutely. If we don't ask that question, then we're just taking training modules off the shelf and forcing them down people's throats, like the old-fashioned schools.
Yes. And what are you seeing with organizations today? I do worry.
Yeah, the thing Shauna mentioned about measuring people really being able to do their job differently, that's the hardest part. And I learned that with organization, that's the part they struggle with. So we have to help them help themselves. Yeah.
And they need to set these goals. And do you see companies with a clear vision of their goal, or are they kind of just like, oh, we need to learn?
Yeah, well, sometimes they do have a clear goal, but most of the time we have to help them a bit. For example, customers asking we need something on communication. And then we say, what part of communication and why, and what is the pain you have within the communication?
Yeah, there's just two super simple questions that I think every training learner, anybody around learning should ask. What happens if you don't do it?
Yeah.
And what benefits will you have if you do it? What are you looking for? If we don't ask those questions, and very often we don't, because we're sort of trapped in this loop of getting the 8.3, being very happy, having our egos be, very happy and shiny, and then, saying there's nothing wrong with me because I'm getting the 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Pretending as if it is a grade, but it's not. It's a happiness score. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the most wonderful research is already from the 50s of the last century, ladies and gentlemen, which is Donald Kirkpatrick's education. He's found you can evaluate every training at 4 levels. Level 1, reaction. Are people happy? It's the same as, okay, I go to a car shop. I have my car fixed. Am I happy with how they treated me? Yes, I might give them an 8 out of 10, but a week later, if I'm back and the problem is still there, I'm not happy with the solution. So it's just a happiness score. Yeah. And then the second level is, have they actually learned something? I think we should always do a little test, test if people actually know the knowledge you want them to know.
Like a knowledge assessment.
Exactly, or do some skill do a scary skill thing where you actually show that. Then you need to start measuring, are they actually doing it on the job, or are they just thinking during the training, I might do it on the job, but they're not actually doing that. You can use various things for that. You can have people self-score themselves. You can have managers look around. People observe each other. You can do gamification for this, but you can also do mystery visits to see if people are actually doing it. And then you need to see, okay, are my KPIs changing? Are the results of my company changing? And I think you can only be happy when that last thing happens.
You mentioned, this idea of this knowledge test is really getting me because it's something that I've worked on quite a bit in writing a lot of content. What about assessing the knowledge before the intervention? Is that something that you're encouraging, or is it really just looking at the behavior?
So if I might say, I don't like the word intervention. Sorry.
Cool.
I know it's very modern.
Yes, it is.
But an intervention is something that is done when something is not well. Then we need to intervene. So I'd rather speak about learning activities.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Because
Love it.
Yeah, because when there's, you can of course use it, but only when there's something bad going on and we need to fix it.
I love that. Reframe it.
But now I've forgotten your question. I'm really sorry.
Measuring learning or the knowledge level before the learning activity.
Yeah, I love that. I love doing. I love people coming into a class and then just going, "Oh, please scan the QR code. Please go there," and shows what you know now. It's going to be anonymous. I just want to get a grasp of what we know so far, so that I can show to whoever's paying for the training.
Yeah.
There's actually been some learning going on. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, you see that very much more these days, more often that they do a quick check-in before a learning activity takes place. And it can be small, it can be bigger, it can be really an assessment or something.
And one of the biggest influences on me actually doing something with what I've learned is self-confidence.
Yeah.
So if I can see before I scored this, now I'm scoring this, I have that experience, the possibility or the potential of me actually doing something with it rises a lot. So it's super important.
Yeah, and also starting something with a bit of reflection where you are standing, just to give you that sort of extra context to what it is you're about to step into and some thinking about where you maybe need to improve.
Yeah.
I think this brings me to our last statement for the episode, and that is learning and development managers should look at quality over quantity when it comes to training. Duh.
Sorry.
Yeah, I wonder why this is a statement.
This is like for that exact reaction.
Yeah. I think living in the age where the 8.3 is still a thing, we can have, I know some companies, I was shocked to find out, they actually measure how much hours of learning are happening during the learning week.
Yeah.
And they're actually celebrating the amount of hours of learning. And I think that's really a waste of celebration, even though I love celebrating anything, because I would want to celebrate how have we improved? How has it helped us?
What's the relevance of those learning hours?
Because you're basically telling your people, I love that you spent time on learning, instead of, I love how you've improved, you've gotten better.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
What about quantity in terms of people? Because I think, organizations see, okay, let's get everybody going. What about that?
I might have a bit of a weird opinion on that. I very often, when companies speak with me or organizations speak with me and they want to create a certain result, there's different blood types in the organization, and sometimes there's a blood type that has a lot of ego and that they don't want to change a lot and they are not very interested in learning.
Or they know already.
They say
they know everything already.
I know everything.
Yeah.
Which is just very normal. I would go the same way. This is normal human behavior. It's, we're scared, so we're just going to say, I know everything. So I always like to look at those people and think, oh, they're really scared inside, even though it comes across as quite aggressive or arrogant. And I always believe in working with the people that want to go and take them first and make sure that they have an awesome experience, that they start to celebrate what they're learning and then see if the rest will follow. So very often I have to have discussions with organizations who want to start with the naysayers. Always start with the yay-sayers.
Yeah.
Go with the people who want to go, have them have fun, maybe even create some scarcity. I've done that a lot of times to say there's only 20 places. And if you want to be part of this, we're going to be doing some innovation for the company. If you want to be part of it in this, you need to apply.
Yeah.
So of course, on the background, there's a goal of having as many people involved as possible. Maybe we're already organized for 40 people, but we're going to say it's only 20 places to get the right people going and have them go, ooh, I need to prove that I'm worthy.
There. Yeah.
Let me get in there. And then have them be the ambassadors of the learning.
Yeah.
And maybe even not touch the people that don't want to. Because when the movement is going, it's going.
Eva, I'm curious to hear your perspective because I know that organizations are looking for ways to get those naysayers involved. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, kind of the same way Shauna does, because we also believe that people who want to develop themselves should be able to, and not being holding back by the naysayers. So we are looking for the ambassadors, the L&D ambassadors within a company, and really making them stand out, and maybe communicating about them in success stories within the organizations. And so really the naysayers will eventually join. So that could be a waste of time to really focus on them first. So
it is a waste of time.
Yeah,
and
we
a
kind
waste
of
energy.
Yeah, we advise to focus on the yes sayers.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because otherwise you're going to just hold back this group from...
Yeah, and you're going to try and make something that is so perfect. We live in such fast times. Just create something where the first people will start to go and then improve it along the way instead of creating it for the least likely people to be happy with it. Then you're going to take so much time and energy.
Exactly.
You know, the marketplace will have changed a lot by the time you're ready.
You touched on something important just now. You mentioned... don't wait because things are going to move really fast, and trying to create a learning activity for a broad audience seems almost impossible.
Yeah, especially if you start to focus on who's going to say no and who's going to be displeased with it. So the approach would be like with any tech, create it, see if people like it, improve it, and then relaunch it. Very often I now go to management teams and I go with, I've got 7 ideas. I'm going to share them with you for the learning activity, and you can tell me what is better, which you don't like, which you hate, which words should we use. And we're sort of creating a co-creation where they're really invested in, okay, this is the thing we're going to do. Ooh, I might not even know it myself. Can I come to the training too? So you make it very attractive for them and you co-create the session. The IKEA effect happens, so they're more invested in it. And
what is the IKEA effect?
Oh, so the IKEA effect it was discovered at Harvard. They had people fold origami for the first time, which created horrible origami things. Yeah. And they had experts do the same. And then they had people buy their own creations, and also people from outside buy their creations. And the people who had created something that looked horrible were actually offering more money for their own horrible production than people who were actually buying beautiful origami. So that's called the IKEA effect. It's like when you buy a Billy cupboard and you create it yourself, you'll place a disproportionate amount of value into it because you've created it. And I think using that IKEA effect for people to influence the learning...
It's getting buy-in, basically.
It's creating buy-in and it's creating more value because I've suffered through creating it. Yeah. And that suffering creates added value. So that's a very powerful way of creating learning.
I love that.
Yeah, that made me think about a team development plan I've recently made for an organization that was really together with HR and together with the manager, and we made a draft version, and then the manager went to the team with it and asked, "What do you think about it?
Yeah,
is this something you want to learn, or am I completely in the wrong with this?" Then we went back to the table and then made up a version 1.0. So that really was a co-creation between us from a content perspective and the customer within their teams.
Yeah, because when you create like the perfect prototype and you have people look at it, they can only go binary. They can go yes or no.
Yeah.
When you create something that is, it's good, but it's not finished yet, and you present it as a draft and they'll influence it, first of all, it always gets better than you could do it by yourself.
Yeah.
But also the buy-in will be way greater,
Yeah.
and you'll have the IKEA effect.
There you have the engagement again.
I love that. I feel like this is a really strong note to end on. I like to think that I'm going to implement a lot of this in my own team. I'm definitely going to get them working with me to decide what we're going to learn next. And as far as our listeners are concerned, do you have final takeaways for them? What would you recommend, Shana?
Can the recommendation be a stopping of something?
Yeah.
Any value in the 8.3?
Stop putting value in
Yeah.
the 8.3.
And start creating real value on your KPIs, on the things you want to achieve. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that insight. What about you? What's your final takeaway for our listeners?
Yeah, well, I think that we as a learning and development community can encourage each other to make the impact greater by getting the results and measuring the results. So that's a takeaway that's coming home with me.
Set those goals and
Set
get
those
some
goals.
help. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. And for me, I think the takeaway really is that time flies when you're engaged. I really like that. That, yeah, you don't need to be laughing the whole way through a learning activity. You can be a little bit scared. Be enticed. Yeah, I love that. Well, that's everything for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for everybody who's tuned in. If you liked this episode or learned something new, please share it with a friend or a colleague. You might help them move their people forward too. And while you're at it, please give us a review. It helps other people find this really helpful content. Until next time.